But our last student presenting is Lucas Brown, and his thesis is Respect for the Men and Women in Blue. And his judges are Jenny Holler. She is a mother of 5 with a bachelor's degree in political science and pre-law with a focus on American history. She also has women's health training, both in health and nutrition as well as midwifery. She has homeschooled for more than 10 years and has taught in various co-op settings. She and her family love to play sports and read books and to travel. Another one of Lucas's coaches is retired Master Police Officer Tracy Parker. He worked for the Concord Police Department and retired in 2023. He is a graduate of South Stanley High School and Stanley Community College. And he studied criminal justice program and basic law enforcement training. He holds an advanced law enforcement certificate from the North Carolina Justice Academy. He worked in several divisions over a 30-year career, including emergency 911 dispatch, patrol, traffic safety and enforcement, community engagement and education, school resource, the DARE program, and finished as a court liaison to District Attorney's Office in Cabarrus County, where he oversaw the district court's cases of 150 officers. Mr. Parker is married to his wife, Ginger, and they have 2 daughters. Mr. Parker is currently working part-time as a substitute teacher and enjoys golf, gardening, and spending time with his family and friends. And our last judge is Erica Domiglio. She graduated from UNC Charlotte with a bachelor's degree in elementary education and UNC Wilmington with a certification in instructional technology. She spent her career teaching in Title I elementary schools in Kannapolis. She currently homeschools her 2 sons, Dominic and Vince, and spends her days as chauffeur running them to wherever they need to go. All right, so now I would like to welcome up Lucas Brown.
In any serious emergency, staying calm and making decisions not based on emotions, but with a level head is best. Imagine a scenario. Let's say that you are at the movie theater with your family. It is late in the evening on a Sunday night, but there aren't too many people at this particular theater. As the movie you watch ends and the sky darkens, you all walk out laughing and joking about the funny moments and the memories you made that night. But before you and your loved ones reach the car, a masked man steps out from behind a large van, and he has a gun. The attacker rushes your group and grabs your little sister, brother, or even maybe your child. He then proceeds to throw your loved one in the van and steps on the gas. He's out of sight within seconds. What will you do? This is a nightmare scenario, of course. However, emergencies like this happen daily, and people must be ready to respond within minutes in order to prevent the worst. Most people's answer to my question, what will you do, is to call the police. This is because police officers are trained in the police academy to stay level-headed and calm in every situation. In any emergency situation that would likely stress the average person out. The average time that an American police academy takes is about 6 to 9 months, and it can be expected that a person will undergo extensive hands-on training during this academy, and that the tactics and scenarios taught will train them both physically and mentally on how to handle different real-world emergencies. But what would you do in a dire situation if there were no police officers to come to your aid? What would you do if there were no police officers to enforce our country's laws? This is something that we must consider. Where there is law, there is also need for law enforcement. And we can define the term law enforcement into 3 categories: police, courts, and corrections. This is important to note because we are not just talking about law enforcement as a whole, but the specific subject of police officers. So, what is a police officer? A police officer, by definition, is a law enforcement officer responsible for maintaining public order, ensuring public safety, and preventing and detecting crimes. Police officers are authorized to enforce laws, investigate crimes, and make arrests. However, we must remember that they are also here to protect and serve our communities and citizens all over this nation. Today, according to data found by the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the rate of violent crimes has fallen almost 50% between 1993 and 2022. with decreases in the rates of robbery, aggravated assault, and non-negligent manslaughter going down over 30% for each. This shows that law enforcement officers are working diligently to reduce crime rates and that they are working hard to protect our communities nationwide. We owe them our respect. Police officers must also ensure that citizens and criminals are treated justly. Being just, as a police officer, means that every person you encounter should always expect to be treated with dignity and according to the law he or she broke. This, in turn, creates a mutual respect between citizens and the many police officers who are patrolling the streets and highways of our country. And while we do not often see police in action every day, they very much are, with over 7 calls a second, or 240 million calls a year being answered by police dispatch in the United States of America. With police answering so many calls every year, we also often hear about police officers being arbitrary or power-hungry people. However, it is the case that less than 1% of the millions of people who come in contact with police claim that the police officer who responded to their call used any kind of misconduct. This means that over 99% of calls answered by police officers are handled with respect, professionalism, and care. There are also speculations that police officers treat low-income households and often poor communities differently. But a recent poll that surveyed over a dozen low-income communities shows that most residents in these poor areas want more police presence, not less. In the surveyed urban areas, 53% of residents wanted more police presence, 41% wanted the same, and only 6% wanted less. America needs police officers now more than ever. The laws that this state and country lay out are being broken every day, and most people do not realize the dangers this country faces. The little battles and struggles that happen daily here in the cities and communities within our country should be a high priority, and there must be recognition that the police force is for this country, not against it. Police officers are present all over the United States, trying to care for and protect each community, whether they want them present or not. Police deserve honor and gratitude, rather than being profiled or disrespected by the people they have sworn to protect. But what will happen if we as citizens do nothing? What if we keep living life in a way that doesn't show the police force the respect they have earned? What if the police are not shown the appreciation they deserve from civilians like you and me? And what if the government decides to defund police officers? If these things happen, civilians will be without a necessary form of law enforcement, which they rely on highly. And police officers who serve our communities today will be underpaid less than they already are. Police are here to keep us safe and to ensure that law and order are kept. And when civilians do not realize that, it becomes increasingly difficult to maintain peace within our communities. If police departments were defunded, it would not only make it more difficult for our country's police officers to earn a living, but even fewer people would want to go into that field of work. This would make the United States a place where no person would like to live because of the societal dangers and lack of law. So, what can you do to ensure the police force and law enforcement officers are not just appreciated, but that they are also respected and honored for the massive role they play in our communities? There are 2 things that I can recommend people do if they want to show some love and appreciation for our police officers. First is something relatively small that you can do any day of the week, and that is to shake an officer's hand and verbalize your gratitude. Doing this shows that you recognize what they do for this country, but on a more personal level, it shows that you appreciate their presence in your daily life. Another thing you can do is donate to charities that support police officers across the country. You can give as little or as much as you want. Some charities include Concern with Police Survivors, Cops Direct, and the National Policing Institute. Donating to charities such as these can help promote the safety and well-being of officers, provide the police force with proper equipment, and can even help fund the families of police officers who have been killed while serving our country. Doing these acts of kindness for law enforcement officers also gives them more incentive to keep doing their best for us. And on top of that, it helps mend the broken state that this country is in today. There is no need for law enforcement in a perfect country where everyone is at peace with each other. However, it can be agreed upon in the United States of America is a far from ideal nation. In other words, if simple people start respecting and honoring the role that the police officers play in our communities, it will not only give more people the incentive and desire to step up and fill their shoes, but the peaceful relationship that police and civilians should have all along may finally start becoming a reality for our country. We tend to respect that which we appreciate. So let's show our appreciation for the men and women in blue. Let's respect police officers.
Typically, I find that sometimes on the matter of respect, everybody doesn't have an agreement on what that looks like. So when you're referring to respect in this issue, what does that look like?
I think respect and appreciation both look a little different. I think police deserve both because, it may not be the case that everybody comes in contact with police officers all the time, but they are ready and prepared and they're sworn to protect civilians. And so I think not just appreciating that, but also respecting the fact that they're putting their lives out there and that they're working hard to keep us safe and to enforce this country's laws is something important. I think just realizing that would be what I'm referring to.
Good. Okay. Your talk about how integrity, fairness, and transparency are the virtues that police officers are called to be. I really like that. But my question is, how does that look from a training perspective or in the pre-hiring stage? How does someone who's hiring the next round of police officers determine that those three virtues are within that person? What does that look like? Do you know?
I didn't do a lot of research on that, but I know that when being hired, not even in the academy, but the steps before the academy, not everybody who applies to the police academy gets hired, and there must be screening done and background checks. And I believe, at least for Mecklenburg and Ferris County, people have a face-to-face interview with the chief of police, and I think that helps to determine maybe the moral character of these applicants. I'm not 100% sure how that would work. I haven't done a lot of research on it.
If you could create a program like that, what would that look like?
I think it would, if I could create a program that looked like that, I think it would, I think that's a good question.
They hire you next week to create a program to make sure that all the future police officers will have this moral character, this intense moral fiber that deserves our respect. What would you do? How would you?
I think maybe just a few weeks of assessing somebody, whether you pick certain people who maybe view the police psychologically, to ask them questions over a period of a few weeks. I think that would be important to, just get to know about the police officer's personal life, get to know about what their moral character is, almost like a counseling session. I think that would be interesting. I think that would be a pretty successful way to go about that.
Mr. Brown, I'd like to follow up on the first question. You made mention that two-way citizens can show their support for law enforcement officers as the direct acknowledgement and the shaking of hands with an officer you meet, and then donating money to the charities that you spoke of. During your fact-finding, are there any other ways that you think will help in increasing that respect?
I think the biggest one is just people just civilians kind of showing the appreciation and respect, because I think a lot of the times, depending on the division or the state, police are often viewed as the bad guys or people that do want to be arbitrary or power hungry because they are given a level of authority, and I think they can be intimidating. And I think just civilians realizing that they are here to protect us and not to harm anybody, right? The laws are put out in order to keep us safe. They're not just so they can kill
In your paper, you referred to less than 1%, there's less than 1% incidents attributing to negative interactions with police officers. The view of police officers, I think, has been impacted by social media and the news. How does the police department address that issue? How can they help with the respect that they're receiving and addressing that negative connotation that's coming from the media?
I think just putting out the facts, going into research about each and every incident that happened. I think going in and showing like what really happened, because I think a lot of the times maybe the news doesn't put out everything that needs to be put out, whether it's to profile one person or another. I think the police force specifically, not 100% sure. Maybe, I mean, just using social media or different websites to actually put out like the truth about these incidents. Because there are certain instances where police have acted arbitrarily and power hungry, but it's blown out of proportion a little bit because they're not as often as we would think. That answers your question.
He has a follow-up.
Okay. Do you feel that the media and some in the political environment share some of the responsibility for this lack of respect and this hatred towards law enforcement?
I do, yes. I definitely
Can you
do.
explain?
I think that, like I said, not everybody actually has encounters with police officers every day, right? Somebody might get pulled over once every couple of months, once a year, once every couple of years, but everybody sees the news, everybody sees the social media, and I think definitely more often it's put out that police officers are, messing up or doing something wrong, or maybe a police officer is hired that shouldn't have been hired. And so these incidences happen, and then people see police in a bad light because of, one time. That answers your question.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So, similarly to both of these, I have two questions. One, that less than 1%, I tried to look in your works cited or your bibliography to determine the year of that, because in another place you said that in 2013, the African American community, a small number felt negatively towards the police force. And then in the next sentence you said something like, another study has more recently found that it's only a smidge smaller. And so it hasn't changed drastically. That's kind of your point, which is a good point. I'm curious if you know of new studies like in the past 2 years, right? Because of what happened in 2020 and 2021 with the Black Lives Matter movement, and you mentioned that in your paper. Do you know about new studies? Like, is it changing? Is the view changing from prior to those other stats?
I do not as of the last year or two.
Mm-hmm.
Not as of 2024, 2025.
Okay. And then, do you know of specific punishments for police officers who start to show signs of public misconduct or starting to have that lack of moral fiber that you talked about? Are there specific consequences for them? Where they're not interacting with other people, or they're the roles that they would play? Do you know about that?
I don't know the specific consequences based on, depending on the law they broke, each and every scenario. But I do know that most, if not every, police department evaluates police officers, and they take all these instances, and I know that there are very specific punishments, whether it's losing a job or probation or just being evaluated over time. But I'm not 100% sure what the specific.
I bet it varies too for each county or whatever. Were you able to interview police officers for your research?
I interviewed 2 police officers, and I've interviewed 2 police officers. One of them was more recent, probably in December. One was in September, and then I've been on 2 ride-alongs as well with Charlotte.
And how did those police officers feel about do they feel respected? Like, what kind of findings did you discover?
I think that they do at some level, not disrespected, but I don't think they feel the proper appreciation that they should. Both of the people I interviewed were current police officers. I don't think they felt the appreciation that they think they should have had. But they also, one thing they've learned to do is just not to take things personally, because there are people that respond to police intervention negatively, and so I just think that police officers not taking that personally, just making it a job, what they do, not who they are, is important.
I'm glad you got to do that. That sounds amazing.
It was
You mentioned the ride-alongs. Is this a career path that you would consider? And has the view on respect of police officers impacted that decision to take a career path?
Yes, I am considering that career path. I know I'm going to go into emergency services and debating between fire academy and police academy, but this is not negatively impacted that decision. Obviously I still think that police need to be respected more so, but I think that it's still a really rewarding career path in many ways.
One last question for me. Did any of your personal views change after your interviews and ride-alongs and research for this paper?
I don't think so as a whole, no. I mean, I've definitely learned a lot, but I think at the baseline, I still believe police need to be respected. I still think it's a very rewarding career path. So no, not really.
Do you think that the respect for police should be unconditional?
Define. Or can you rephrase that maybe?
Are there any parameters that should make it where there shouldn't be respect for police? Like, is there a line? Like, if I were looking at government, should I respect the government in all circumstances? I have a line. Like, if they're coming here and trying to like video everything that I'm doing, I'm becoming the next founding father. You know, what's that line for respect for police officers?
I do think that police should be unconditionally respected. I believe that the police departments will take care of punishments or unemployment of officers who do cross that kind of boundary. But I think that as a whole, police officers should be respected, and that there shouldn't be like, what's the word? That's a good question. No, I'm sure I do believe that police should be respected. Even.
Any more questions? All right, good job. All right, I want to thank you guys all for coming out to support our students for doing their senior thesis. This concludes everything